What's going on, everyone? This is Braden Pearl from Advancement Hockey Advising. For those of you who've been here for a while, you'll kind of notice that this week is a little bit different. So I got two members of our AHA team here. I got David DeChevy and I got Frankie Hart. Both these players have played at the Junior A, NCAA, and minor pro level and have been in Europe for quite a few years now. And, I thought it'd be, we all thought it'd be a nice idea just to kind of get an interview, get their thoughts on everything throughout the whole process, and just so you guys get a bit more info on them, and a bit more info on the whole experience. So, without further ado, I'll just get both the guys here to introduce themselves. Let's start with David.
Hey guys, so I've been with Advancement Hockey for just over a year now. Pearl reached out to me when we were starting up back in February, and he launched a company and asked me to get involved. So I was pretty excited about that. In terms of my hockey experience, I've grown up playing, through the minor ranks in Toronto, and then I went to play junior in the OJ for the Oakville Blades. Following that, in the summer, I got a commitment to play NCAA Div 3 at Western New England University. And then after my 4 years there, I pursued the minor pro route, and I've spent some time in the US, Sweden, Spain, and then now I'm currently still playing in Italy.
Cool. Your turn, Frankie.
My turn. Perfect. I'm Frankie Hart. So I'm from Timmins, Ontario. So I played prep school hockey at the Ontario Hockey Academy. Then from there, I played my junior hockey in the Campbellton Tigers in New Brunswick. Then eventually committed to the Fredonia State University, which led me to play some time in the Federal League with North Shore Knights, and then eventually going over to Europe to play in Sweden, Germany, and then now the Netherlands. So I've been on with Advancement Hockey Advising for about a month now. I've been doing this line of work for about the last 3 or 4 years, mostly on the mentoring aspect of things. But I want to come on board to help place players in good experiences and just assist players that way.
Awesome stuff. So, my next question for you guys would be, what made you guys, join AHA specifically versus, another advising company or just doing something else? What made you guys really want to dive into advising?
I think the biggest thing for me was realizing when I was younger is how uneducated I was with everything. I had no clue going into junior what the process was. So, I needed some help there. And when I signed up with my first advisor, he helped me out, but it took some time and I needed a bit more transparency. And then as I kept growing up through the years, you learn how important having a good advisor in your corner is. And then I just wanted to give back to the kids growing up now who are trying to do the same thing as me. Because I think it's quite important. And if you really want to get to the next level, and you need that level of connection to help you get there.
Mm-hmm. No, very true. What about you, Frankie?
For myself, growing up in Northern Ontario and kind of being a smaller player, just on my personal experience playing, obviously there was had to battle quite a bit to move up in the levels. So if I can assist players in the North or anywhere, kind of guide them through that process and help them with connections to make their experiences better, easier that way. That's why I want to do that. Plus, like I'm sure we've all had negative experiences with past agents, advisors. So obviously I want to, do an overcorrection there and help players on the right path, and not just place a player on a team and then call it a day. I like how we do the mentoring aspect. And also we do our research in terms of the organizations and the overall experience players can have in certain areas with certain teams. So just help players that way.
Yeah, no, 100%. I could definitely speak to that. I mean, the hockey world's so complex. If you don't really have the guidance and stuff like that, it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. And also, not all advisors and agents are created equal. So, I'm glad that you guys are on board here and you're really trying to make a positive difference in the lives of players. So my next question for you guys is to dive more deep into, your whole junior experience, your NCAA experience, your minor pro experience. Talk about, those experiences more in depth, how you liked all of them and which one, you kind of liked the most. And let's just move on from there. So what about you, Shevs? Let's start with you.
So going into junior for me, I was coming out of US prep school. So I had no, past experience at like a junior B or junior C level. So when I got the chance with Oakville, I needed to make it out of camp. So that was a bit stressful at the time because, I was 19 and I didn't know what was going to happen. So I had to spend the summer training and get ready for that camp. And then when I made the team, it was quite smooth sailing for the year. It wasn't my normal junior experience because not normal, but I lived at home. I didn't have to go to a billet family or live away from home, so I had the comfort of that. And the Blades took good care of their players, so I really enjoyed it there. So as the junior season went on, I had interest from a couple schools, but nothing really followed up. And so when the season ended, I was a bit upset because I wanted to commit that year and not play my extra year. So in April, when the season was done, I went to a showcase camp, and that's where I met Western New England. And so they liked me. And then over the next 2 to 3 months, I talked to the coach and I visited, and then I committed. And when I spent my time there, it had its ups and downs. The program was on the up, but it wasn't a top D3 program at the time. So there was a couple kinks to work out. And when you get there, you really learn. You can see the difference between how a top D3 program runs versus a mid to low end. We didn't have a rink on campus, and that obviously affects recruiting, and it puts a damper on some things. But we weren't the only ones, so you make the best of it, and you learn how to work through it. So over the 4 years, I made connections. I studied. I had fun, like from a social aspect. But the biggest thing I think when you're going to college is you learn that you're not just there to play hockey. You're there as a student and as a social aspect thing too. And everyone has eyes on you around campus because most D3 schools are pretty small. And if you do something wrong, people are going to know. And, teachers will know, professors, and then the athletic department will see who you are. And you're always a reflection of your team. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big thing there.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. On the NCAA side, the schools are so small on the D3 level that, you're really held to a high standard as a student athlete, because if you do something wrong, everybody knows, and it just doesn't reflect well on the team. So you're really held to that standard. Before we dive into the minor pro side of things, I kind of want to get Frankie's take on his time at Fredonia and in his junior programs. Dive more deep into that, and then we'll get to the minor pro if that works, Chefs. Okay. Frankie, you're up.
Perfect. So I was at the Ontario Hockey Academy, and I was put into the CCHL draft with a bunch of my teammates and whatnot, and ended up being drafted by Smiths Falls. It's actually a cool experience because although it's not a big time draft, it's the CCHL, but it's still neat to go to a rink and sit in the stands and have your name called, throw a jersey on, take a picture and whatnot. So plus I was with my teammates. I think there was 5 or 6 of us. So that was a neat experience. So fast forward to August, go to the training camp in Smiths Falls. I was there for over a month, did all the preseason games. And then at the end of our last preseason game, coach kind of pulled me aside and said, yeah, Frankie, we don't really see the spark in you, so we're not going to take you this year. And I questioned him and said, what's the spark? And he didn't really elaborate. So they ended up sending me to their EOJHL team, the junior B team, the Athenaeros. Was there from September to, I would say, early December. And great experience there. Treated me well, lots of ice time, put up points, had fun, but it wasn't what I wanted in terms of, playing caliber. I wanted that junior A experience. And then when I noticed I wasn't getting the call to Smith Falls, or if I was getting called up, it was just kind of sit the bench, which wasn't fun. So I looked elsewhere and got an opportunity to go to the Maritime Hockey League in New Brunswick. And head coach at the time was Charlie LeBlanc, and he didn't know anything about me. He just knew this kid was coming in, and he just gave me a shot. He said, hey, this is your first practice. Show me what you can do. And I think I was about a few weeks of not actually skating before that practice, just because the transfer period took a while from my junior B team to let me go. But anyway, I was there in Campbellton for 2.5 years, and just honest coaches with Charlie LeBlanc. And then my last season was with Ron Gaudette. And, if I was playing well and earned the ice time, they gave me that. And it was a bit of a weaker team for the Maritime League. So made playoffs 2 out of the 3 years, which was okay, but kind of got taken out first round by the top team. But good experiences overall in that league. And then I found myself in my last year junior, hadn't spoken to many teams because I always wanted to go NCAA, whichever, if it was D3 or D1, obviously. So I actually got myself an advisor, super professional guy, flew up to Halifax to see me, took some iPad videos, took some notes, had me in contact with a handful of Division III schools. And then eventually got on the phone with Jeff Meredith from Fredonia State. Super good conversation with him, and then eventually ended up committing. My advisor had told me that Fredonia was a very, very strong conference and a good program. So I ended up going there the following year. My 4 years at Fredonia were awesome. Made some really good contacts, good friends, good memories. But in terms of playing experience for myself, I don't think it was necessarily probably the best fit hockey-wise, just based on my style of play and potentially the way the coach wanted things done. But overall, like it was mentioned, like your experience in college, it's hockey's part of it, but there's a whole other aspect to it, like making connections, making friends, just learning organizational skills. And that's what Jeff Meredith probably taught me the most, was just how to be organized. One of his quotes that always sticks in my head is whenever himself as a coach would go to a meeting on campus, he always explained how he'd be in meetings with obviously faculty members and professors and whatnot. And he wasn't necessarily always the smartest person in the room, but he was always the first person there on time and the most prepared and most detailed. So just the life lessons that I took away from that experience were huge and will obviously pay dividends far down the road.
Yeah, no, I met Coach Meredith on a school visit too, and I could just tell the attention to detail that guy had. Really, really good guy, nice to talk to. Really big fan of him. And it's funny you mentioned you played in the Maritimes and you committed NCAA from there. Typically, as we know, most players that play in the Maritimes don't go NCAA. It's not really a league that promotes it all that much. But that highlights the fact that you got yourself an advisor, a good advisor, and he spoke on your behalf and got you, helped you get that commitment. I think that just not to, toot an advisor's horn or whatever, but it really, it really does make a difference, especially if you're not in like a prime league like the NA or the BCHL or the CCHL or anything like that. If you're more in the MHL or something like that, an advisor can really make a difference in between you getting a commitment or not. So that's huge for sure. So now just moving forward here, let's dive more into the pro side of things, the pro experience. So let's start with you, Dave, and just to, get your take on things with the pro side of things.
Mm-hmm. So after college, or pardon me, midway through college, in my senior year, I picked up an advisor because I saw that one of my friends was playing in Sweden, and I wanted to explore that option. So we were talking over the course of the winter and then through into spring. And I guess partly on me, I was uneducated with the expectations of what you could get. And I didn't realize how hard things were. So, as time passed, no contracts were coming up, and whether that was on me or my advisor, it all depends. But so I decided to stop pursuing the Europe path for the first year, and then I had some interest from the Federal League, and I knew that it wasn't the best league to go to, but it was a start. So I signed with the Watertown Wolves and went to camp in October. So that was a good experience. It's pretty, it's a mental toughness builder for sure. Because when you walk into a dressing room and you scan the room and you see who you're up against, and you learn that right away. And you either have to fight for your spot, and you have to find that extra gear that other players might not have. Because when you get up there, everyone can skate, pass, shoot. You have to bring something different. So out of camp, I made the team. Stuck around. It was a good experience, and then they ended up trading me after a couple weeks. And I guess that's the nature of the beast with that league. Guys move around like it's nothing. So I got sent out to Elmira, where over there they have quite the professional setup because they took over the Elmira Jackals East Coast rink, and so it was quite nice there. And then over the course of a couple weeks, I was enjoying it. I was playing well. But the style of the league wasn't exactly for me. And I wasn't a fan of, the combination of the travel. And I guess sometimes the Federal League gets a bad rap, even though there's good players in that league, but sometimes the style of hockey in terms of, the fighting and a bit of dirty play, it didn't really fit my game of who I was. So I decided to pick up and go home and start over. So I found a new advisor with Import Sports, and, they were great. They helped me get over, they helped me get into Europe in about 3 weeks. So that was quite the transition because I had to pack up my stuff, hop on a plane, and go somewhere I've never been. So when I got to Sweden, I was playing in Halifax in Division 3 to start. It was a new experience, and the biggest thing for me, I guess, was coming from college where everyone's enthusiastic and upbeat on the ice. Everyone's working hard every day. The Swedes are a bit quieter on the ice, and it was kind of a culture shock. I was very confused, and I asked the coach about it, and he's like, that's how we play, and that's how we are at practice. It didn't mean they were bad players, because they're all quite skilled over there, but it took some time to adjust to the game, adjust to the new size of the rink because they play on Olympic ice, and just the overall style of play. So a couple months went by, and I was spending time there, and I found myself a bit antsy with not having too much to do. Even though at the time I was setting up the new training facility in Toronto, so I had a bit to do as well as my studies. But I talked to my agents with import, and I'm like, hey, do you guys have anything a bit more competitive, a bit more intense? And so they told me that they had a spot in T-Bro in Division 2. And so again, 2 months later, I packed up my stuff, hopped on a train, and went down to T-Bro. And even though it was just a jump in one level, because Sweden has multiple tiers, it was a big jump because they had a bunch of import players that were there. They were getting paid, and they took it a lot more serious in terms of having we had off ice workouts right after practice. We had 3-4 practices a week plus 2 games. So I really enjoyed my time there. And then the following season, I was looking to find a different spot just to fit, because I was really looking to go to Italy, but going back to T-Bro was the best plan. And I had a good deal there where, I got to play hockey and be an assistant coach with the junior team. So my time was fully allotted when I was in Sweden for the second year. We had a bunch of good imports on the team. And so things were good. I enjoyed it. But then again, I was still looking for something a bit more, because to go into more detail, the town is a huge aspect when you get to Europe, because you could be playing super competitive hockey, but if you don't have anything fun to do or exciting in your downtime, you can get bored quite easily. So I was looking around, and then on OTM Sportsnet, I found a Spain contract, and I reached out to the guy, and they liked me. I sent them my stuff, and then again, another 10 days goes by, and I hopped on another plane, and I went down to Spain. And when you get to a league like that, they take less imports, but they invest more in them. So I got treated quite well with everything. They made sure I was set up. I was settled in my house. They let me know of all the contract perks that I had, along with the other import who was with me. And I loved it. You can't really complain about living on a beach. So that was a great time. And then the following year, the one that just passed with COVID and all, I really wanted to take my chance at Italy, because I was getting older, and I wanted to play where I wanted to go for 3 years after college, because that was my goal. So in the summer, I spoke to the coach of Brixton, and we talked for a while about it. Again, it was paired with me playing and coaching, and I think that even having that coaching background puts you at an advantage when you go to Europe, because teams want maybe a young coach who can jump in and be on the team and also coach with the youth players. So I got to Brixton, did my quarantine with COVID and all that, and then I enjoyed the year there. We had ups and downs with pauses of the season and back on, but we got through it and we finished the year. And I love my time there. And then and that's where I'm heading for next year. So it's been quite an up and down journey with 6 teams, but it's every single team has been a learning experience, and you take everything away from it that you can.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think definitely the main message I'm getting from you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's that every town is different, and you really have to do your research as to, what town you're going. And I know you didn't really know when you were first starting, but it's, what town you're in and where you go and what league you go in really, dictates what kind of an experience you'll have. So
exactly. I mean, as the years go on, you come to terms with the fact that, okay, maybe the higher leagues might not be the end goal, but every country and every city you play in is an experience. So for example, when I went to Spain, I knew that I was dropping in level, but the experience was completely different. And I loved it. because eventually you learn, okay, I can play hockey, I can get paid to do something I love, and then I can enjoy an awesome part of the world. And that comes with everything you're doing.
Definitely. I think, yeah, if you go like, I think putting when you're at the minor pro level, I would say putting the experience first is probably the biggest thing versus like, obviously you want to consider caliber of hockey too, but experience is probably the biggest thing when you're at the minor pro level for sure.
I think that depends on your age,
Yeah.
because I was entering
For sure.
that when I was 24, but there are some players who want to get into it when they're coming out of junior and they're 20, and their goal is to climb the leagues as high as they can.
Yeah, in that case.
So that's when you really want to start. Okay, I might start here, but how do I progress to this higher level in 4 years?
Yeah.
Versus a guy finishing college who might want a couple years of experience and then just enjoying their time, and then finishing when they know the time's right.
That's a great point. Yeah, I guess it depends what your intentions are. If you want to just climb the ladder, you don't care if you go in a town that's like middle of nowhere, but you're really trying to climb the ladder, get to better leagues and stuff. That's totally fine. But if you just want to enjoy your experience and stuff, then you probably want to put the town and the overall experience before, or just a little bit over priority than the caliber. That's a good take on it. All right, Frankie, let's move on to you. Let's hear about your whole pro experience.
All right. So like I mentioned with my experience at Fredonia, it probably wasn't necessarily the best fit for myself in terms of like on ice play. So my last year, my senior year, I was actually only dressed for 4 games between October and February, which isn't a whole lot. But my passion for hockey was obviously still there. My love for the game and my goal to play professional at whatever level was obviously still there. So when I saw that I wasn't playing at all, actually Fredonia had made playoffs, and I knew that if I only dressed 4 games throughout the season, there's no way I'm going to get in for a playoff game. So I spoke with my teammates and I spoke with the coaching staff and just kind of let them know that, I've been basically for the team all year long, like keeping a positive attitude, being a good room guy, working hard at practice, but not getting the game time. So I basically asked my team if they would mind if I basically left the team during their playoffs and joined the Federal League team. And coaching staff and players were all super happy and on board with me. Selfishly, but realistically, it was the best thing for myself. Yeah. So one of my past teammates at Fredonia, Taylor Bourne, he was with the Danbury Titans of the Federal League. So he got me a shot, opened the door for me, and I ended up going down. And before my first practice with Danbury, met with the coach, Dave Lunn, and he basically told me that he doesn't know me. Actually, on my elite prospect at the time, it said I was a right-handed shot, which I'm left-handed. So he had to juggle the lines around and fix that. But yeah, he told me, he's like, you know what, Frankie, like, I don't know you at all. We're going to take it one practice at a time, one shift at a time, one game at a time, and go from there. And the reason I respect Dave Lund so much is he's just a fair coach and plays the players that are going. So my first weekend with them was a 4-4. So after playing 4 games from October to February, to having 4 games in 4 nights was a quick turnaround. But long story short, with Danbury, I didn't put up a whole lot of points, and I'm not going to make excuses for that. But I think that, only playing 4 games throughout the year had something to do with it. But I ended up finishing the year on the second line with a guy who came down from the ECHL, and then a top Fed guy. So my experience there was awesome. Unfortunately, I couldn't play playoffs with them just because I was on a student visa, and every player who wants to play playoffs has to be on an actual playing visa. But after that successful experience, I felt like I fell in love with the game even more after kind of battling not being in the lineup for the year at Fredonia. But fortunately, they wanted to sign me for next season. Unfortunately, they folded in the off season. Yeah. So I was part of a dispersal draft, and I was picked up by the North Shore Knights, and that was a new team in Canada. There was only Cornwall at the time that was a Canadian team in the Federal League. So I ended up going there, and weaker team, got a lot of opportunity. Was somewhat of a player coach, not officially listed online, but so yeah, like North Shore Knights was a great experience. For the player coaching aspect, our head coach was actually from the Czech Republic, and he didn't have a visa to travel to the States. So we took our junior coach, our affiliate team, up with us. And when he was no longer with the junior team at the end of the year, I ended up being player head coach and whatnot. So that was neat, filling in rosters and stuff like that. So, but one thing I want to touch on with the Federal League is like Dave mentioned, it might have a bad rap in certain aspects. The on ice product is actually quality hockey. If you look on elite prospects and guys' resumes, they're good hockey players. I actually did some digging, and many years ago, there was 12. Well, I counted 12 pro leagues, like major pro to minor pro, throughout Canada and the US. So going from the NHL all the way down, obviously, and obviously 12 leagues, and the Fed being at the bottom of a 12 league, it's not very competitive. But I counted, and there's about 6 pro leagues now between Canada and US, if you count the LNAH and whatnot. So that's half the number of teams. So the caliber has come a long way from the past, but there are still instances where you see some fighting and some little bit of goonish hockey, but the quality is pretty good. So moving on from the Fed, my last year, my first full year with the Fed, I finished with a point a game with North Shore Knights, and figured I deserved some like an SP call or something like that, a tryout of some sort, and that never came about. And like Dave touched on the style of hockey, I kind of want to explore European options because I heard bigger ice, more of a skill game. Um, so I ended up going for not so much the experience, but I just wanted a place to play to prove my name. So I ended up signing with Svenstavik in Sweden, which was Division 2 up north. And funny little story about that. Myself and a buddy, Storm Adams, landed in Stockholm and spent a week there before heading up north for the season. And he had a buddy, because he went to Morrisville State, and he had a buddy that lived in Stockholm who was Swedish. So he was like our tour guide, showed us around. And then when we told him we're going to Svenstavik, he pulled up this link that was in complete Swedish, and it was basically talking about how Svenstavik was known as the worst hockey team in Sweden. I guess at any level, even though they were Div 2. And we're like, whatever, we just came here to get a shot, foot in the door, like make a name for ourselves. So we went up north, and population was like maybe 400 people. We lived in a house 20 minutes from the little village, but the house was cool because it was myself, Storm, Mike Willock, Lucas, Slovak goalie. So we had a lot of people in the house. So we had like our own little community, even though we were like away from the little village. But the coach there was awesome, Simon Anderson. He wanted to win. He was actually from England and came there for his own coaching experience to put his name out there. But I was thinking like Sweden Div 2, like what's the competition going to be like? We played a weaker team, and the level was like, okay. But then I think our second game of the actual regular season, we played against Broomflow, which is like the top team up there. And they were a Div 1 team a couple years back. And that was just like, wow, like this is actual hockey. Like these guys are good. And it was a bit of like a shock factor for myself. But anyway, with Svenstavik, I was successful and did well. And obviously that team didn't make playoffs, but the top team in that conference, Broomflow, actually picked me up for the playoffs. And that was completely different playing experience. Probably the best hockey team I've ever played on in my life in terms of all around players. So was lucky to be successful with them. But after that season, I kind of noticed that like money wise, contract wise, Sweden was okay, depending where you were. But then I got myself an agent, and he mentioned how, potentially more money in Germany, and painted me a very nice picture in Germany. So I ended up going there. Super upgrade city wise, went to Mannheim, population 200,000 in an actual city. Things to do.
200,000. That's kind of a big change. Yeah.
Big jump. They had a DEL team there as well, so you could go watch some hockey games and whatnot. So living wise was much different. Hockey wise, that was fun as well. I played the better part of the year on D, just because that's what they needed. And for myself, that kind of opened my eyes, just my personal development wise, just in terms of like edge work, skating, and just lessons for myself as a player. So I enjoyed my time in Mannheim, but at the end of that season, I kind of missed the style of hockey and the caliber of hockey that was offered in Sweden. So this past COVID year, I started the year in Hell Fours. They were able to promote to Div 2, and my buddy Porka, helped me get that connection. And team was really solid, had a lot of really good imports. But unfortunately with COVID, the season didn't start on time. We were supposed to start like the very next day, and that team got COVID, so that was on pause. But that comes back to Dave saying how his experience in Hell Fours, and when I was in Svenstavik, I didn't know any better. And then going to Germany in the big city, I was like, oh, this is how you live a better life with more things to do. And then going back to a smaller Swedish town, it was like, all right, yeah, my own experience to enjoy things, I need a bit more to do. So when COVID hit, I actually had an opportunity in the Netherlands. I actually have family lineage there. My great grandfather was actually born and raised in the city that I actually went to in the Netherlands, in Groningen. So I went there, never actually got any game time in. We had a couple organized practices with their restrictions and whatnot, but that was probably the best I've ever been treated by an organization in terms of just like what they provided me. And I wasn't even playing games for them. So I do have the opportunity to potentially get my citizenship in the Netherlands. So I'd like to explore that. And it's just a scenario that, overall with hockey, living in the city, very nice city, it just seems like the best fit for myself, and that I could actually settle there and, settle down and like set some roots down to be someplace long term and not just keep jumping around different places.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be really nice for you to, have a place where you can kind of settle down, kind of create your life there. I think that'd be awesome. So, I think yeah, at first it's funny, you didn't really know any better. You went to the city that's kind of like in the middle, well, the town that's in the middle of nowhere in Sweden.
Village.
Yeah, village is probably a better word, right? But then you went to a bigger city, like, wow, this is much better than when you went back to the small village. You were like, okay, maybe, I kind of want to prioritize the experience a little bit more over necessarily maybe the caliber of hockey being the highest. So I think that's really cool. Yeah.
Frankie, you touched on how well you get treated, and I think that's a huge thing. Yeah. And you learn that progressing from, even if you play in the East Coast or the SP or the Fed, you're not treated in the same aspect as you are when you go to Europe.
That's a big point.
Of course, depending on your team, like you said with the Netherlands, but in my time in Sweden Div 2 and then Spain and Italy, you see how well like a team would take care of you and they make you feel welcome, and that adds like such an invaluable component to your experience in Europe and how you feel playing for that team. You feel much more attached to playing for them and the organization, and you're not just a player who's selfishly looking to move up and get out of the team as fast as you can. You truly want to be there, and I think that's huge for any kid who wants to go play hockey in Europe or anywhere. You want to feel welcome, and the better you're treated, the better you're going to perform because you're liked.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. That goes with, minor pro in Europe or anywhere, or NCAA hockey or junior hockey. You want to go where you're going to be treated well, where you're wanted, where you're going to have a good experience, because then you're just going to play better from there if you're happy where you're at. So I think that's huge for sure. So kind of, those were awesome. Yeah, for both of you guys, like, sounds like great experiences. But moving on here, more to like, my next question here is more, what are like the minimum qualifications for a player to play, let's say NCAA D3 hockey? And then from there, whatever collegiate hockey they play at, or if they just play junior hockey, what are the minimum qualifications that you kind of need to go play minor pro hockey? Chevs, you can start if you want.
So there's so many different leagues and there's so many different ways you can enter. I think if you're coming from NCAA and you want to get a salary out the gate, I'd say minimum, you should be in double digits in points in some aspect consistently. There might be some clubs that could pay you a little bit or pocket money, or they could pay you through coaching if you're not at that level. But then there's other factors that could be, if you're a good coach, or if you do youth coaching or anything, you can jump into the organization, like I said, and they can give you a small salary for doing that. I know I've earned some money on every team I've been on doing that, plus the playing. So that was a huge perk. But then if you're coming from junior, you have to look at a different tier of leagues. So not counting major junior, because that's a different thing, but junior A, you have to be a solid point producer, like over a point per game, in order to get into at least a decent spot, like a mid-pack Sweden team or a mid-pack France or Germany. And then paired with that, your game film has to be quality, because these people see you from nothing. And if they only have a 2 to 4 minute clip of who you are, they really need to see all the highlights of you as a player, and you have to make that clear to them that that's who you are, and you have to wow them, because teams see so many players a week. There's agents and advisors that send out all their clients to these places in Europe, because a lot of places are limited. Spain and Italy, you're only allowed 3 and 2 imports respectively. And then in France, I think that number climbs up a bit higher. And then when you get to Sweden, it's unlimited imports. So, that's why Sweden's such an attraction factor for a lot of junior guys trying to get in. But you have to look at your options and see where you want to play, but know that your resume and your video will carry you to get in the front door. And then it's up to you after that.
Yeah, 100%. I think when coaches look at, a player that if they have a player info in front of them, they'll look at their elite prospects first, right? They're going to see what kind of stats they produce, where they played and everything. And then from there, if they like what they see there, they'll look at the video and really, like, you said, Dave, having a solid, 2 to 4 minute highlight video is super, super important. If your video is not quality, the coach is going to click off and go watch another one, right?
Exactly.
You really need something that wows them, because there are they get a lot of emails, they get a lot of messages. So it's important that you really have a really good highlight video.
Yeah. And on top of that, I've been a guy who said it myself, and I'm sure a lot of guys who might not be, top point producers say it. When you tell someone that your stats don't reflect who you are, while you might be right, a person watching your video and looking at your stats blind will not care, because they don't know who you are.
It's true. Yeah.
So you either need that video or you need the chance to go and prove yourself over there.
Yeah. So if your stats, like, let's say you, Dave, you played, NCAA hockey, you didn't hit incredible, double digit numbers and everything, but you still did well. How do you market yourself? Do you say you're more of like a guy that can, grind the corners, when puck battles, stuff like that, and PK and stuff, or like, can you get out of that role? Like, how'd you kind of market yourself?
I think once a team decides to take a chance on you, you're able to prove who you really are as a player. For me in college, I've played first line, second line, third line, fourth line, and then even scratch. So I've been up and down the whole train, and I've played in various roles. But in college, I was more of a third line PK guy with a little bit of power play time here and there. But when you get to Europe, it's not a chance to reinvent yourself, but if you get the opportunity, because imports are looked at as, the higher players on the team, the guys that they want you to produce, you have that chance to prove who you are and maybe adjust your game a bit to play and to earn that time and that status as, a top 6 forward or a top 4D. But for me, when I got to Europe, the biggest thing for me on top of my playing was carrying myself and showing my character. You treat everyone with respect. You work as hard as you can. You don't take any shortcuts, because people are spending money on you and you don't want to take advantage of that. So that was a huge thing that I learned, and people really respected that fact when you show like your true, genuine character when you get to your teams.
100%. Yeah, I think, if you get that shot, I think from there you can kind of reinvent yourself and kind of you have that shot to play those top 6 minutes and everything. I think for you, I remember seeing your highlight video, and your highlight video is very solid. So I think that kind of helped you get your foot in the door too.
Yeah, that plus I didn't touch on this, and I'm not sure if you have it, Frankie, but I got a European passport, and that's a big ticket, especially with COVID now, because teams don't have to look for a visa for you. So it gets you in the door to live free in a European country, because if you don't have one and you're not on a contract that has a work visa, you're only allowed to stay in Europe for 90 days, and then you have to leave and come back. And even that can get a little iffy in terms of travel, because not everyone might let you back in. I've heard horror stories of guys going home and then not getting let back into their team or back into the countries. So their team had to send their equipment back home to them overseas, and that's quite the hassle.
Yeah. Geez.
Can you photocopy that European passport for me and send me a copy?
Grow your hair.
Yeah, exactly. Grow your hair and get a bit of a tan. I think we can
a tan.
But yeah. So Frankie, what about you? What do you think it takes? What are the minimum qualifications first to get, let's say, to college hockey, and then from there, what are the minimum qualifications you think? How do you think you can get your foot in the door to, any minor pro hockey?
I think one thing I want to little touch on before that is just as a player, like at any level where as you're growing up and developing, is to really make sure you're not just a one-dimensional player. Because I've seen so many, and we've all played with guys who are like really, really good, like in midget, and we'll say even in juniors, where say they're just like a natural goal scorer, yet they won't work on their 200-foot game or be good in the D zone or necessarily be a good teammate, like Dave said. So I think if a player can just make sure that they're good in all aspects, because I know for myself, anytime I got to a new level, obviously any new level you're at, you're not necessarily starting in like a first line, first power play position. So you got to work your way up in the minutes and whatnot. And I know for myself was like my work ethic. I made sure anytime I was on the ice, I was working hard, trying to outwork, other teams and other players. But like my face-offs and PK. So those were instances where say a player, you're not a natural goal scorer, but you can do those little things that get you into the game. And if you're good on your face-offs, you might find yourself as a first-year junior guy, and say you're a lefty, the coach might put you out there for a face-off late in the game and you pull the goalie and you're out 6-on-5. And like, you never know what can happen while you're on the ice. And that's how doors open for yourself and better experiences, is just having that opportunity on the ice. So anything you can do as a player to get more ice time, especially as a newcomer, I think that's huge. And like Dave touched on, just being a good person. There's a ton of hockey players that are super skilled and super good, yet if they're not good people or good teammates, that cuts, so many options for them kind of down the line.
Yeah.
And in terms of for NCAA and pro and whatnot, playing junior A hockey, like there's a lot of different leagues in terms of Canada and US. But if you can play in a junior A league and put up, solid enough numbers, that'll open doors for you. And like myself, who found myself in a junior A league in New Brunswick that wasn't looked at very much by NCAA schools, because of the amount of major junior guys and draft picks and whatnot. That's where we come in, right? We assist players getting to the next level, and open those doors for players. And in terms of, NCAA getting to minor pro, like myself, my numbers weren't great in with Fredonia, but the role I played at Fredonia was, I mean, like I said, I'm a smaller player, but the role I found myself in was like a third line, get to the red, chip it in, bang bodies, which is not necessarily the way that, my favorite way of playing, but that's what kept me in the lineup. So I figured, what, if that's, giving me game time, I'm going to continue to do so. Because if I didn't, then I was in the stands with the other 6 or 7 guys on the team watching games. So I think that also helped me in terms of being that complete player, 200-foot game, good in the D zone, that aspect of things. But I did have to transition a little bit getting to the minor pro, because I knew I could be a skilled guy, but I just, after 4 years of not really utilizing that, I had to like reteach my brain to hang on to the puck and not dump it in and not rush things or panic. And that's just a mindset and the mental part of the game that I had to work on, which I know is huge for all of us, and helping players along the way in that aspect. But from getting from college to minor pro, if I'm talking strictly like NCAA wise, I think the minimum is NCAA Division III. Like I didn't put up very many numbers, but it got me a foot in the door. Mm-hmm. And I know some of my old teams that I'm in contact with for minor pro in Europe, they're actually starting to look for higher end NCAA guys that might have a couple SPHL games or things like that. So the game of hockey as a whole is getting better and better every year. As you look at the NHL, how good that league is compared to however many years back. So it's getting more and more competitive to get in leagues for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love a lot of the points you touched on, but definitely I think, having, I would say NCAA, like, mid NCAA, even low, but mid NCAA, and minimum, like having at least a few points on there. I think for guys that maybe are ACHA D1 in a really good program that put up a lot of points, they have a shot at getting a minor pro contract, but even then it gets harder. If you don't have the NCAA attached to your elite prospects, it is definitely a little bit harder. If you are ACHA, then, get at least a really good highlight video, you have to have like at least a lot of points and stuff, and you might have a shot, but you might have to start, in the federal league or something, build a resume and then get your way over there. But What do you
Yeah,
think, Chubs? You're kind of shaking your head.
Yeah, because I always see it, and the one thing I want to say is sometimes a team's resume expectations for an import will be based off their past experiences.
Yeah.
So if a team had a really good experience with, say, a federal league guy, they'll be open to bring more in. But if they don't, then they might say, hey, we don't want anyone from this league. And that's the same with usually not NCAA D3, but ACHA, because it's a little more of a fuzzier area in terms of competitive like disparity across the whole league in the US. But that's a big thing too. So if a team has a good experience with someone, they'll welcome more players from that same line of work.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's where having an advisor, an agent that knows the teams very well, that's where it kind of helps, right? Because if you are a player that, did really well at the ACHA D1 level or something like that, but you don't know all the teams in Europe, what they look for, if they like ACHA players or not, that's where having a good agent or advisor would really help you get your foot in the door in the right programs that'll be the right fit for you. So I think, yeah, you guys touched on some great points there. Just to kind of wrap up, what's your guys' main message to players out there trying to, go the junior route and want to go the college route and then the minor pro route eventually, maybe? What's your main message? You can start with you, Shevs.
It's short and sweet. It's stay consistent. Don't take any shortcuts. Be a good person with a genuine character, because that'll take you further than anything. And find your wow factor or your spark, like Frankie said before. What separates you from someone else? Even though you might not be the most skilled guy, the biggest guy, the fastest guy, find something in your game that you can elevate among other players that'll get the attention of coaches.
Awesome. What about you, Frankie?
I think one thing I just kind of want to make clear to players, and like by no means do I want to discourage players in any sense, but in terms of minor pro and whatnot, I just want them to know that it's not as easy as you might think. It's a process going from juniors to college to minor pro. So players in minor pro, like a lot of people might like know other players that have gone places, and you might think like, oh, because I know this guy or because I skate with this guy in the summer, I can go there as well. But if you think for like minor pro in Europe, in a sense, the amount of players graduating from junior programs in Canada, in US, in Europe, the amount of players graduating from some sort of college or university hockey in Canada, US, and minor pro guys from North America wanting to go overseas, there's a ton of players out there that want these roster spots. So by no means am I discouraging players. Like obviously, like, shoot for the moon with your goals and whatnot, but it's not necessarily as easy as you might think. And the only reason why I want to say this message is just to encourage players to just work in a smart way. But, if you want to achieve it, you absolutely can. It's just make sure you're putting in the work.
Yeah, 100%. It's not easy. You have to put in the work and, try and go to the right places, put up, some numbers and be successful before you get over there. It's not, just a walk in the park to try and get there. So I think that's an awesome message from you guys. Thanks so much for your time. I think you guys touched on a lot of really awesome points that could help a lot of players out there that are trying to figure all this out. So thanks again for your time. For those of you who stuck this long, thanks a lot for watching it. Thanks for your time as well for the viewers. And, if you like this kind of video, feel free to drop a comment down below or send us an email at info@ahadvising.com and just let us know what you thought, if you liked it, if you want us to keep making videos like this. I really enjoyed the whole process, and, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you guys probably enjoyed talking about your experiences and stuff too. So
good time.
Yeah. So, so on that note, thanks a lot for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you on that next one.